Hello, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here at Riga Technical University for this event. And today I will be the moderator of this panel. It's always challenging. So for you, it was hard to decide between the coffee and us, right? And we wait for some minutes. And now it's even more challenging because now this panel and then lunch. You can imagine. So this panel holds you from the lunch. So we will try to do as energetic as possible together with my panelists. Our panel is built to win sustainable, smart, innovative, and secure. So a lot of questions already in the title of the panel. Today with me are 4 great panelists, and they will have a lot to say about this topic. So Dr. Artis Pabriks, CEO, MilTech, head of Northern Europe Policy Center. Everyone knows already each other, right? Jānis Karlsbergs, chairman, Latvian Transatlantic organization. Donata Kateliete, research Eastern European Studies Center of Lithuania. And Gavin, Wilde, non-resident fellow in the Technology International Fair programs at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Thank you for this. Okay, let's start with the first question to Dr. Artis Pabriks. Is Latvian defense and innovation ecosystem maturing enough to provide for domestic security needs at the moment?
Well, that's a long answer you can expect. Maturing enough. Look, if I am going back into history about 2012, I would say that our defense industry was almost non-existent. So we started at that time to invest in defense industry, to look what we could do and see this as an economic part of Latvian economy. Then came Russian invasion in Ukraine 2022. And even if in 2022 still there were just a few drones flying, Latvia already have been developing their own let's say, drone systems for a number of years. The only thing is I remember when I was the first time a minister, 2010, 2014, I was visiting this factory and they were kind of also complaining, oh, nobody buys from us and we are doing here something. And that was the famous UAV factory, which is now Edge Autonomy. And you know, Edge Autonomy, this is now a factory which is the largest one in the Baltics, which exports to 80 countries. And many ways, because of these first trailblazers, I would say that as far as the drones, Latvia is now, and I'm not exaggerating, Latvia is now the powerhouse of drones in the Baltics. We have a certain advantage because we started earlier. It doesn't mean that we will always be there, because, you know, it's like a referendum of identity. It has to be done every year, and we have to all the time look for competition. And another important aspect is here that if we speak about military drones or W's systems, then we very much depend also on cooperation with the governments or with the national government, because as I frequently mention, military industry is not something where you can go on the market and sell like potatoes, bananas or something else, because it's simply different. It's not a free market for military industry, no matter about which country we speak. Okay. Secondly, if I have to speak now as a representative of MilTech, which is Latvian New Technologies, Drones and Robotics Association, we have been counting. If we are a new association, like 1.5 years approximately, we have around 40 members. And from these 14 members, approximately 19 are drone producers. And these are not all in Latvia, but most of them are known. So I would say 90% of known drone producers are in association. About 4 of them are seed drone producers or startups. Then we have 2 or 3 unmanned vehicles over the land, and the rest would be air, different type of air drones. So we have something to offer. Is it good for our defense forces? Yes, I think it is very good, because we learned already from COVID pandemic that suddenly all the global economy routes and supply chains were breaking down. We see how it happens with the Russian invasion in Ukraine, where you need to produce a lot yourself. So for us, of course, it would be a challenge to not to provide, but for us would be a challenge to know the perspective of the government. And I can honestly here tell what is our bottlenecks, for instance, because drone industry and new technologies, it's relatively new animal in zoo. And that means that a lot of these companies are startups. Startups not always can get, for instance, a good financial support, because banks and private finances, they are looking for benefit. It's normal, just like also drone producers. Now, if the startup doesn't have a deal with the government, then of course it's difficult to get financing for future developments, for future researches, and definitely here's the government, and I can look to that issue also like a former politician who has been on that side too. Of course, government is always under the strict rules, because once you give some money, you need a feedback, it must be well used, you cannot lose money. But then I would like to ask a question, how many millions lost, for instance, Manhattan Project or somebody else before they developed a nuclear bomb? I mean, you cannot just tell, we give money, there is a success, there must be failure. There will be. You must be ready for this as a startup. Von Braun, with V1, V2 in Nazi Germany. I mean, how many projects we did not have with tanks between the First and Second World War, which were just made a research, you had a prototype, and it failed. So it's normal. So for us, it's important. And we made a sociology also with our industrialists, and that there are 3 challenges for us to be stronger. The one is finances. The second is procurement, because it is needed, especially for startups and especially for these items which you produce first time, the prototypes, and of course the bureaucracy, what we all speak about, because they don't have time to deal with this. So my answer is yes, we can provide much more even than now. At this moment, we are on a growth, really going up, but how it will develop, it very much depends also on the government, on the country, and we cannot orientate only 2 more things. We cannot orientate only to the local market. We need to think about export, especially as a small country. In comparison to many European countries, we are on a better competition lane than many others, but again, it will not be for a long time. So these are initial thoughts on your question. Thanks.
I will have one additional question about the private market, because innovation ecosystem, you can't rely only on several players. Private capital is extremely important for any startup. What is the situation at the moment in the Baltic states regarding that? If the private equity is enough active in this sense and invest in the startups in defense industry?
Well, I think it is improving, because of course all our companies are looking also for possibilities to get some funding from European Union, to get into consortiums. Number of companies have been already successful. I think that inevitably there will be a necessity somehow to merge, for some companies to become larger, for some maybe to leave the market. And if we can do this together between all 3 Baltic states, or for instance Poland or Finland or some other countries which would be interested in our know-how, because we do have, we are competitive now in Latvia, then the money would come. I would say that we are still looking for the latest update how the government money for military industry will be decided upon. We are also looking. The latest news is from our defense ministry that next year about 50 million will be given to drone industry. Is it a lot or not? I would say we would aim at more. Why? Because from this 50 million, I guess 30 is from SAFE, which is a European loan, so 20 only national budget. I would say we can aim for more. But of course, for us, the most important thing is not to lose timing to test prototypes. And here there could be improvements because we have, and sorry for local critics, but here, of course, if prototypes are waiting 3 years until some of them are purchased, it's not a good timing for industry and also for defense.
And what would be good timing?
Sorry?
What would be good timing?
Well, the good timing would be that immediately once you have a prototype, it is taken by armed forces. It is paid at least partly, and it is broken down. It is tested in either in our polygons or in Ukraine, and then industry knows what they have to improve, and government and armed forces, they know what they need and what they don't need. So at this stage, you see, we are a small country. Our armed forces do not have hundreds of researchers and engineers who really understand the business. They're just few. And I think they would only benefit if they would work together with industry, because almost every our company has their counterparts also in Ukraine, which means in war. So that means if armed forces work together with industry, then know-how and development would happen even faster than now.
Okay, thank you so much. So already good steps forward what we need to take to improve our innovation ecosystem. I will continue with Jānis Karlsbergs. So question about communication. How Russian communication and diplomacy affects European solidarity and European defense development as such?
It's answer in one word.
Hopefully not.
No. Okay. This is really a question about, I would say, information environment altogether. So and just I don't want to be academic. Even we are sitting here in university. So, but factually, we have 3 layers how information environment is built. So we have physical, natural, where we all sit here. We have virtual, where we do those stuff here, and we have cognitive. So, and not all of them are always connected. So, therefore, when we speak about Russia, our own understanding of the world we are sitting in, it is very diverse and different segments we live in. So, when we speak about Russians, again, we are on very different, I would say, agenda points or different centuries in some sense. Because Russians, when we need to understand what they were already doing decades ago, and I usually say they never stopped doing it after collapse of Cold War, only we ignored it and they didn't have money, sufficient energy to push it in. So therefore, they were attacking us all the time around. And when minister was just hour ago, shortly ago, speaking about no peace, no war, I would say it's normal answer, but I would try, Russians are at war. And not only them, I would argue that as well. We have other Asia powers which are looking at us as enemies. What is our answer to it? And I know the problem sitting on the government side, what we are going to do with the drones attacking us. So not really attacking as we have realized, but intruding on our airspace. That's only one example. For this, we need to have different regulations. Basically, we should admit there is a wartime. What happens in Ukraine? It's a wartime. There is collateral damage. There are destroyed buildings, killed people by attacking drones. Are we ready for this? So this is, therefore, my question intentionally. It's war. We should be admitting that we are at war, maybe specific war. What happens in information space? It's exactly the same, and for decades. Are we admitting it? Yes, we are kind of admitting. But it's not only sufficient if we admit in one space that here in Baltics, naturally, we were speaking a long time about, but still, we must admit we were not being able to block it for different reasons. One was reason, of course, technically you can always, information is going all around, but as well legally, European environment was not admitting that it's enemy who is attacking us. It was just free press, and we admit it. So it's all fully integrated within our system. So we must kind of establish common grounds within the nation. So again, if we speak Latvia is one case. We are on the border side. In Baltics, we understand it easily. In Poland, we understand Finland, Sweden, we understand. But if we speak about Spain, it's so far away and there are different problems. And how to get the common grounds within European Union actors, how to get within alliance and a wider sense. So this is a huge task, and Russians are using this in their own benefit because they know what they are doing. So where are we with this? Yes, of course, their full intention is to disrupt us. How they are doing it? And of course, the hardcore is Ukraine, but it's example-driven. They're showing that they are going to destroy or subdue. The best, of course, if we give up and let them do it without fighting. But destruction, mass killing, it's just communication from their side to tell what they are going to do. So then you have this war line in information space, psychological space, virtual, which all are in cognitive space connecting us. And then we are looking, there are people who look at, okay, it's threatening, and maybe, and you know, you have heard in the information space, you just check when people are saying, oh, so maybe let's try to build peace for it, and then then analyze where the information is coming. So this is massive attack, and our main problem from, I would say, with the West in general, so there are better examples, there are worse examples, but overall, that we are on defense line. We are still on defense line. And I fully agree with the minister who spoke that there is a gap full on some side of our understanding. But here I would like to say it's speaking on most government or elites. They understand whether all society in different nations, again, so I try to speak not only in Baltics, where we have majority understanding in Poland. There are many nations which understand. But whether all nations are fully immersed, battling, not eating what is given by enemies, is still a big question. Therefore, answer how they are splitting by different means. The simplest one could be still corruption when you get through to money, which is based in our countries, having businesses. There is a big project, which luckily, due to Ukrainians, they are starting to fail. I would say on communication line, we are not sufficiently speaking on state of affairs of Russian economy. I think it's in extremely bad situation. Of course, there is endurance by Russians to keep it running longer, so you never can tell when it will disrupt, but it could happen even tomorrow, in next year, after next year. And that's, I believe, why they are so massively, aggressively currently pushing their peace agenda, so-called peace agenda, because they realize that their state of affairs is very, very weak situation. And so on our side, we should be much more investing, speaking to people, to getting them on understanding where the enemy are and what we are supposed to do. So this is not perfect answer to this, but definitely we must be still much more engaged in our public activities and getting the word out to the people.
I will have one more clarification. If you are saying we, who are we? So who needs to talk with the people? Who needs to take this responsibility? You mentioned that there's a big difference between the West and Spain and Portugal, where they are okay with that, maybe what's happening because they don't care. So question, who should take this responsibility of communication and push to the society this understanding, common understanding about what is good and bad?
We, the West, is classically understood as liberal democracies. And the question is, are we successful? Can we tells that we are succeeding versus dictators and autocrats. We are really in liberal democracies, we the people, which are organized by political parties, non-governmental organizations. One reason I decided to join this part, being so many years in the government, and individuals, so we the people in the West, in liberal democracies. And currently the narrative is really going that democracies are weak, people are only talking, nobody is doing, so we must finally do things. And there is a part of common sense critics about that we are not delivering products, what governments sometimes need to do. Just one example is immigration is really was going out of hand. And it's not that we all know that West need for drone technologies. We know how much problem we face here in Latvia, but overall in Europe, missing a workforce. But at the same time, uncritically getting migration, it's just giving, this is one of the questions. There are many kind of questions which were not really openly discussed within societies, which brings to the crisis of trust in between us, meaning politician, individual, electorate. But there is, the problem is that there should not be a problem. This is kind of we are acting. But we are just weak understanding that our successes. So those are we all sitting here like the West. If we are, of course, different values, then that's question how we are speaking about values. At the end of the day, what they are attacking who we are. And then we, in one moment, we realize as individuals, that's really as individual, as a groups, who are we? Yeah, we need a strong leader. Maybe we need as well strong leader. So this is really our own internal discussion, but we are quite many. So definitely we have different democracy models, but we have Japanese, we have South Koreans. In the group, we have quite many. So we must be continuing this part within our societies.
And Americans.
Oh, I forgot to mention? Of course, Americans as well.
Okay, one last question on this. So if each of us is responsible about that, so if I meeting some Spain person from, I don't know, university, how I could engage this person to this conversation, understanding what I need to say that this person would be interested to be informed about what's happening.
Each of us, we have similar set of problems, but we are not going to lecturing. What is discussion about? I believe we are sometimes starting to forget what is discussion in between people. And here again, probably repeating, which I have been speaking, what we had as well with this case in Latvia with the Istanbul Convention, missing discussion on this part, and informative discussion on this issue. And you should not going even to Spain to this, but they have their own problems. There was a deputy ambassador from Spain, in fact, here, but probably she left. But their migration problem. We need to speak about the problems which are real on each of our ground. And if we pretend, telling about our problems and listening to other problems and finding the common, it's a sensible dialogue in between people. So therefore, if you are going just lecturing, Russians are bad, you bring, of course, examples why they are bad. And if other side don't listen, naturally there is a problem. There is no dialogue. It's such a simple thing. We are forgetting simple things, so probably going back to simple. And patience. I believe the patience, because when we look only to each other only as competitor, in a civilized society, it's a problem. So I think we should go back to civilization, to rebuild civilization.
Thank you. We will continue with Donata. So question is, how do Baltic states compare to each other in terms of defense readiness?
Thank you. So I think we are now current in the situation where we can have a very good context for cooperation. We have a common enemy. We have United States drifting away, but still we are lacking a common defense vision, I think, because we have still different priorities in our defense planning. For example, for Lithuanians, we have, I think, still a pretty different mentality here, because for ordinary Lithuanian, we understand the threat perception and the threat like the one which is coming from the land. We always think that the Russians are coming from the land, not from the air, from the sea. But what we see now is this situation is changing, and so need to change our defense planning. Because, for example, for Lithuanians, what we need now is some clear base for defense to buy the things that we need and the things that we can use. Not to buy something that looks like, you know, expensive and very nice to have, but then we are lacking the technical stuff to use that. And I think the best example here for us is the current situation in Lithuania, because now we are facing a very strong hybrid attack from Belarus with smuggling balloons. For 3 months already, we do not have our main airport in Lithuania operating continuing to operate smooth. And I think the problem here is that we have defense budget in Lithuania, we have money for defense, but the defense spending not always equals the defense capabilities. And we can see that within the smuggling balloons crisis as well, because currently we do not have any equipment that could hit the drones away, or not only the drones, but the balloons with the smuggled cigarettes in Lithuanian airspace. And I think that is why we will need to cooperate with the Baltic states as well, and also to increase our defense planning at this point, because we also had a very sad, I will say, example in the summer when one of the drones from, I'm not sure from, I think it was from Belarus as well, but it interrupted our airspace, then the drone fell, and we did not have any systems in Lithuania to locate the drone. So our military personnel were asking the mushroom pickers in Lithuania, so if they find the drone in the forest, to call them up. So I think in the time when which we are living in, the situation kind of sad in terms of our preparedness, because if we do not have the systems to detect the drones, and we are trusting the mushroom pickers, so I think that is where we have to boost up our cooperation and boost up our strength abilities for that. And the same goes, for example, with the Shahed drones, because we do not have I think the good equipment to hit them up, because we are using very high-tech technology from our side to counter the pretty much not high-tech and simple drones. So if there's one or two of them, we're kind of good with that. But if the day X will come and we have a lot of them violating our airspace, I think that will also be a problem for us not to have a good air defense systems for that. So I think that is also where we could cooperate more with Latvia as the drone experts here. And so I think that is where we have to keep up the most, and where we have to cooperate with the Baltic states to have more shared defense vision together, and to use the example of the Nordic states to have more strengths, more cooperation, more abilities to use the equipment and supply lines in case to be safe from our common enemy at this stage. Sorry.
That's fine. Thank you so much. But I believe if we go back to very practical steps, because about talking and doing, right? So one thing is that we are willing to cooperate. I believe that's 100% sure that and Baltic states are always together. In this sense, we are also together. But the question is how. So how this cooperation in a very practical matter could be organized, because if we think about the industry, or it's the industry role that they need to find their own value chain and build on that, or it's about government, strategic planning. So question is how to move from willing to cooperate or have some pieces of cooperation that it's really, we can say that we work together on these questions.
Yeah. So I think it should take the both sides of them, same as with the defense industry, because we in Lithuania over the past year, we have seen a lot of increasement in our defense industry. We have seen in a lot of initiatives. We also have some good producers also we have very good cooperation with Rheinmetall, and they are now having their feet in Lithuania. So I think that is one side of the cooperation, to have some joint initiatives for the industry, which will also boost our economic levels in all the Baltic states. And I think from the diplomatic level as well, because we are, from my point of view, we're still lacking some initiatives for the joint exercises. We do have them, but I think we could do more because we all share a border with an enemy state. We have good practices to share for one of each other. So I think it is easier to say than to do, but I think it should be like very consistent and will take not only one part, but at these days where we are living in the situation that we are facing, it should come at all stages from both the defense industry and the diplomatic issues as well.
Okay, thank you so much. And now we move to United States. So Gavin, Wilde, I have, believe, one of the most important questions for today. So how does the new United States security strategy affect the urgency to build our own military industry in common structures?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me and for lobbing a softball at me as the question. I think, let me start with the good news. The good news is, at least from my experience in the U.S. national security arena, is that the Baltics have never suffered from a lack of urgency in this regard, and that the Baltics are what right has always looked like from Washington, D.C.'s perspective, and the approach that all of Europe needs to take in handling security issues. So, I mean, that's in some ways, as the minister said himself, there shouldn't be any surprise. And certainly for the Baltic states, I think it doesn't necessarily augur any surprising urgent steps need to be taken. All of that said, I think the bad news is that the transatlantic geopolitical consensus post-1991, post-1945, is conclusively over. And as much as it may pain many people across the European continent to stew on that fact and operate from that and accept that as a fact, I think it bears repeating. It is over. And if we did not catch that hint from what Robert Gates in 2009 intimated to a meeting of European defense ministers under a deeply democratic administration, I will add, and reiterate again in 2009, and in 2011, I think now it's certainly clear from the national security strategy of the United States in 2025, far more bluntly stated, one of the quotes is, "The days of the United States propping up the entire world order like Atlas are over." And so that's the bad news. The bad news is the thing that we were familiar with, that we felt like we could rely on in many ways, is conclusively over. But if we start with acceptance of that fact, we can constructively move forward. And I think I would offer as well, my own coming of age in that national security arena was during the era of the Obama reset with Russia, during which we were told quite often from these corners of Europe that Moscow operates on a nostalgia for a bygone era and was seeking to reconstitute a mythical past. And we in 2025 now, in the European arena, can't afford to make that same mistake of living in that past era. So that's the bad news, right? But I think, again, the good news is, as has already been stated, the steps being taken in these three capitals are the steps that needed to be taken anyway. We have, defense spending is up, military partnerships, new brigades rotating in and out from the UK and Canadian and German and other partners have progressed. And so I don't think any of these capitals harbors any illusions about the realities that we're now facing. So the urgency now lies less in reconstituting that solidarity of that bygone era than it does in building the complementarity of the new, what must become a new European-led security system. Now, as my colleagues have noted, that will entail a very robust technology stack that remains to be built, but is slowly being built with leadership including here in Riga, right? So that means drones, that means batteries, motors, chips, software, data centers, and cybersecurity. All of those things go without question. And again, the good news is we know what needs to be done. But lest I become a heretic at RTU, and it's probably heretical for me to say as a fellow in the Technology and International Affairs program at Carnegie, I think sometimes we fetishize technology not only as an enabler, but sometimes as a replacement. And I, as a Russia thinker myself, go back to this idea that since 2008, the country to the east of us threw billions and billions and billions of dollars into technology to modernize. What it failed to do, however, was focus on personnel, on train and equip, on doctrine, on a mature officer corps, on intelligence gathering capabilities, on logistics, on leadership. Those elements that make success in a military theater that they simply assumed if we buy enough gadgets and toys, we won't have to worry about it as much. That strategy catastrophically failed Russia in achieving its military goals. And so again, drawing lessons from them that we ourselves cannot afford to make, we need to make sure that we don't assume that all of the automation, all of the connectivity, all of the computing power in the world will somehow matter if there isn't a more seamless military Schengen zone where we can move equipment and personnel more quickly across this continent. So I think, and certainly in terms of AI, one of the things I worry is that sometimes we start with the AI objective and map a military application to market it, rather than starting with a military objective that we seek to achieve and map that objective to the application that we're developing. And so I think particularly with regard to AI, we just need to be, we need more technology ethicists and, dare I say, more technology skeptics to say, yes, technology, but also yes, all of the other aspects of military readiness and capability that we have to have in order to stave off the adversary that we're facing. And so I think this also extends to procurement. I think there's great conversations, as we said, taking place about capital markets and debt structures within the European context. Those are crucial. But I think lastly, the urgency we also face is in distinguishing those multilateral tasks from what are purely national level tasks. And I think historically we've all of us in the NATO community been very good at kind of pushing onto NATO responsibilities for a lot of security threats and issues that are ultimately national responsibilities, whether those be law enforcement or surveillance or counterintelligence, that we need to all be better at internally ourselves before they can ever be truly tapped into and optimized for the benefit of the group. So whether that's Eastern Shield or the drone coalition, I think one of the ironies is that in 2011, when then Defense Secretary Robert Gates warned about the end of this geopolitical consensus approaching, he warned also that there would become kind of two camps within NATO, those that are capable and willing and those that aren't. In 2025, I would argue we have come to the point where we need to lean into that grouping, that we need not wait for full consensus, that subgroupings within NATO and the EU and the European arena can and should lean into their capability and not wait for any kind of, dare I say, permission or consensus in Brussels or elsewhere. So in terms of national priorities, I think recruitment and retention are underserved, underspoken about. That in order to reach the goals of 130 brigades of almost 5,000 soldiers each, which all the NATO defense ministers agreed to this past summer, national level discussions have to be taking place about how are we going to conscript that many soldiers. And those are uncomfortable conversations, but they have to happen if we're going to reach that goal. So I think I'll stop there and again, thanks for the softball question.
Maybe somebody want to comment on this?
I can try because I was also defense minister of this country when Gates was a defense minister. And I would say we have a huge problem because if we look to our Transatlantic alliance and ongoing Russian invasion in Ukraine, then basically looking from Russian perspectives, they can see that Transatlantic alliance and Europe itself is fragmentating and trembling. And even if they are losing a lot of people, and we can caution ourselves by telling that, you know, Russians are exhausted and etc., what they see the fear in our eyes, or at least in the eyes of some of our allies, and they see also that they are trembling, that we are trembling faster than they are doing. So that encourages them. And of course, it could be comforting to know that the Baltic states are doing the right stuff, and we do the right stuff, even if we could do it much faster. But if our allies are giving up of Ukraine, if our allies are seeing totalitarian Russia as a partner and Ukraine as somebody who is standing in between that partnership, then basically they endanger our security very tremendously. And obviously a lot of things what this national security document is telling about Europe is not so wrong. There are some things which are correct, like, you know, not offensive, but there is even a watch which is not working. It shows right time twice per day. So I would say that Europe is continuing to fragmentate, which is a bad news. I think that that's what, where you quoted Gates, this will happen to go on, that there will be willing countries and unwilling, capable and incapable. And if I'm taking on board the American, a little bit with provocation, of course, please keep it in mind, but American approach currently that Europe cannot live under the eternal umbrella of American security, then why, for the God's sake, these countries which are bordering Russia should all the time safeguard the rest of Europe from the Russian invasion? I mean, how long will you live on our behalf until you will understand that you have to pay, you have to invest, you have to create those 130 brigades, and you finally must have the right mindset? And this is what is not happening. And of course, bashing Europe only from the Washington side, it's also kind of, you know, it's good to remind about mistakes, but yes, we see that Europe is declining economically. It's 14% compared to more than 20% in 1991. But what about American impacts themselves compared globally in 1991 and today? So anyway, for Europeans, it is not a good news. But for us, that basically puts a question: what to do? And I think the only question what to do is work as fast as possible in our continent with like-minded countries which see threat in the like-minded way. That's the only way, because we cannot get everybody on board. We cannot reform European Union like we would like to see. We cannot stop immigration just alone of us. So we have to pick up, and that basically means fragmentation more. That means loosening of transatlantic ties until there is no some kind of more friendly approach towards Ukraine in Washington. And that basically means that all what Putin wanted, he is getting. He is getting, and he's not getting because he's successful. He's getting because we are making mistakes.
I would like to object to you. I think you used wrongly the word fragmentation. That's what you meant if putting leadership together to bring agenda. And maybe I missed to say very clearly, if we don't have ambition and clear vision where we are going, that's a problem. That's basically the crux that we don't realize that we are a success story. We are fully on Russian narrative that we are losing. Contrarily, you just go, I remember 20 years ago on our streets, it was half empty of cars and we are a failed state. Now you have traffic jams all the time. There are more and more cars. We are such failing state. But we listen what Russians are doing. So what you meant, Artis, is leadership. There must be those who take on leadership. And in one moment, and there I would really agree with Minister Artis, not you this time, but with Andris' approach, that That's what they want to get, this fragmentation of seeing, and America and narratives from United States that they are leaving. There is part of truth, but in the moment, the truth as well is that America is weakening quite massively on global stage. And at that moment, then in the United States, they will realize that here in Europe, we have strong actors, and that's on their own benefit to be together. It will change. The question is whether we here in Europe can take over the leadership. And when it's going to happen, but 27 as noted in a paper or later, this is a different question, I think. But if there is a leadership, not fragmentation from this side, Russians want to fragment us.
One more thing. Look, but for how long time Europeans will discuss the issues which are obvious? One thing is frozen Russian assets. They can still not make a decision. Secondly, visas. I mean, how could it happen that our Italian, Spanish and other friends, or French, doesn't matter, they are drinking wine and sunbathing in the beaches together with guys which in Donbass are killing Ukrainians and taking a holiday? This is a reality about visa. So leadership, of course, I mean, there's no leadership to make these decisions through.
I think that's the point I would make with regard to statecraft, diplomacy, lobbying. I gather in European capitals, there is a wealth of expertise and networks to shape, if not change, U.S. policy on certain issues, certainly with regard to Russia, certainly with regard to NATO. What I would argue is that statecraft, that expertise, now needs to be reoriented towards the Spains, towards the Italys, towards the Parises, because that's where that change has to happen with regard to those policy issues.
So there's 7 minutes to the lunch. And I will give you opportunity to audience ask the questions. I believe we can take 2 questions. If there will be no questions, so no lunch, you understand the game. But there's already, I see the hands, so please.
Yeah, good afternoon. Sergei Spotavkins, Latvian Institute of International Affairs. Please allow me to break your transatlantic discourse and ask about China. So we are in a trap of dependence on China, and if you want to, you can find China in every issue we discussed today: economy, defense, security, rare earths, etc., etc. So are we in a dead end? Because also in Europe and in NATO, we can't name China nor threat nor partner. It's kind of, we are trying to find some challenge or some competitor. So are we on a dead end, or you see any strategy how to get out from this situation? Thank you.
Okay, well, basically we are increasingly moving into bipolar world if Europe will not get themselves together, which means that will be China and United States. The national strategy actually gave some a little bit positive news for Taiwan, as far as I understand, and for Pacific, telling that they will try to stand for that. Will it happen in reality? We don't know, because, and I would be careful on Taiwanese side, because one thing is promises, other thing what is happening also in Europe, and this is not very exciting. And I would say also that because of Western reset policy with Russia and inability to stop Russian invasion in Ukraine for last 4 years, basically made the alliance between Chinese and Russians and North Koreans much stronger. This alliance would not happen if we would stop Russians in the First or Second World War year of the war. So I would say that there will be more and more Europeans which will be now alienated by US, who will look despite of all the odds for some benefits also with China. So in that sense, fragmentation, political fragmentation, mindset fragmentation in economy will probably not work exactly in the interests of United States, no matter what we think which is right and correct. And I would say that for Europe, the largest problem here is that because of our over-regulation and our way how European Commission and European Union currently exists, it's actually downgrading our capabilities to compete with the United States and with China. And that basically means that we are becoming also less relevant partner for United States in a possible conflict with China.
Just adding to this dilemma, especially for, I understood, European Union or Europe in general is kind of at stake. China, if I remember correctly, is producing currently as a manufacturer around 35% of global manufactured products. So what all the rest, we can guess what other Asia countries are producing. And I very well remember when COVID, well, that even masks, which neither United States nor Europe can produce, so we should be looking to China. So our vulnerability is extremely high. And I could understand on an emotional level what the Trump administration is trying to push agenda on producing everything in-house, maybe for different reasons. But still, the strategic independence is definitely missing part, missing link. The question, of course, how much? And here, United States new strategy, which is kind of not approved by Congress, so it's only paper by. So I still would be looking how it develops, but definitely it indicates that those relations are not as good as we should have, because both of us and having other global partners, we could have safer network of production lines as well. If we go on high end of technology, like semiconductors, which we have, or artificial intelligence even more, there were some specialists who calculated if Europe should code the battlefield, it's around 4 trillion, if I remember correctly. The calculation, still it's of course calculation, which could be mistaken. So lagging behind United States. And still lagging behind as well China. So therefore, European question here is what are we doing? How much we are taking on our own as just production? I'm not going in as a global political and ideological stage, but as production line. So this is a big question. And here I would say is that United States should be seeing essence working together with those who are for so many basically centuries being partners and allies.
Thank you. So one more question, short one.
Yes. Artis, I want to say that don't be so pessimistic about Europe. Europe, in the end, does get its act together, and we can see it happening. Why do you mention Paris, by the way? Macron is doing the right thing. He's just introduced military conscription. Okay, voluntary, but that's a big step forward. So I would just point out there's one country that we're not concentrating on, and that's Germany. Germany is the main country in Europe. If Germany gets its act together, we know this from history, right? Latvia, it's a good God. If Germany gets its act together, and Anders Proud said rightly that Zeitenwende is a fact. Germany has introduced military conscription, not obligatory, but it's there if the voluntary one doesn't work. If Germany gets the strongest army in Europe, even Spain and Italy will follow. Thank you. You agree?
Well,
Okay, that was a question.
Well, Honorable Artis Liene, I wish you are correct, but as we know from the 15th century greatest writer Niccolo Machiavelli, the biggest problem of politicians is wishful thinking.